Hi folks, welcome to another pack review. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but True Telling chapter pack has been out for a while now, and I have Stephen Patane here again to do this with me. Hello Stephen.
Hello, hello. It's always lovely to be back.
Yes, so this is the start of actually a whole cycle of cards, and this is the release article that I will link in the description of this video if anyone wants to read it. So there is some description of some cards here, written in a fancy way as usual for those that enjoy that, and also you will find on this website links to the files that you can have printed either at home or just printed professionally if you like. And yes, we'll get to this in a bit, but as usual, what I like to do at the start of these reviews is have a look at what we said last time when
Hmm.
we reviewed the Spoils of War, and just briefly revisit if we got things correct. So, Steven, do you have any
Good.
recollection of which cards you picked as your favorites of the pack?
As per usual, I have absolutely no recollection of anything that I say, so no.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think it's been what 7, 8 months or something like that since it came out. So it's fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Actually,
No,
you picked a Baratheon card as possibly your favorite. Salador San's Lyseni you picked. So
oh,
have you played it?
I have played it. Not as much as other people possibly, but on release, I played probably at least like 10 games, and yeah, I think I still stick by that. It's really boosts that the smuggler and kneeling location theme. Is it as strong as I would have liked? No, but I think that's more just because of the way the game works outside of the card itself, where not everyone has a wide spread of locations. But yeah,
Yeah, I have played Smugglers a little bit recently, even before the pack that we are about to review came out that actually has Smuggler support. But yeah, this one is the big one that they got, and have played them even, I would say seriously. I considered taking Smugglers to Stalek even, and it's a good card for sure. And so my pick was the other Baratheon card here, Dragonstone, and I
yeah.
said in the at the end of the review we did that I would probably, when we do the next one, say that I have not been able to play Dragonstone successfully, and this is exactly what happened actually. Uh, it's on its own not doing enough to support the other Baratheon cards that stick opponents' cards in shadows, and we speculated whether just playing this without those mechanics would work, just to get rid of stuff like mirror read that the
Mm.
opponent plays naturally, whether it's worth it on the balance of what you're likely to face. And turns out that no one realistically has put this card in their deck. So far, it's not worked. However, I'm not giving up on it. I think it's still the fact that some cards in Baratheon want you to have to be facing an opponent that controls a card in shadows. This is still a pretty unique way to achieve that. So with
Yeah.
more support for that, there isn't any in the upcoming cycle, but there could be
Oh, there's,
in the future still,
there,
right?
there- there's one in the current unreleased cards that does support cards being in shadows, but there's not a lot. But it's definitely, I do agree with you though with Dragonstone that it's, in my mind, it's a card that will grow. At the moment, it's not amazing, but the potential's there.
Yeah, so at some point, since just from the story, Dragonstone is such a prominent location, of course, I'd like to see this card being used, and hopefully we can see that day. And we actually both mentioned another card. I think for you it was the Field of Fire, which was actually
Yes.
many people had opinions about this, complaints. I would say even Targaryen players are rarely satisfied with the cards they get, and actually this one you said that you would enjoy seeing the day when just the big dragons were all in play together and stuff happened with them. And yes, we all know that of course, a deck using the Field of Fire reached the final at Stalek, uh,
Yes.
playing the big dragons very prominently. So I guess this has already, even without further support, been achieved. So I think the Field of Fire
This
has been a success, right?
it's possibly one of the very few times where I'm right, where I thought this would work well, and I mean, if someone took it to finals and Starlink, something's working. Usually, I have absolutely no idea when it comes to how people will use a card, but I'm glad that this one actually uh, encouraged the use of those dragons that we never see. And yeah, no, I was super excited to see that.
Yes, and for me, the second one I mentioned was Former Champion as a card that I would possibly put in some of my decks, and I think many people have had the same situation. It's played in decks, very
Yeah,
popular, but no real complaints that it's over the curve or anything like that. So it has its downsides. Uh, so it has this interesting design where when the strength is lowered, you get the third icon in Intimidate, and in my experience, that never happens. No one gets that far on Former Champions. So you use it for the initial high strength to cost ratio and for the renown, and you can get to 3 so that it gets stealth and the power icon, but keeping it in play for a bunch of rounds to get to 1 strength hasn't really happened. I
yeah,
think it's been an alright card, non-problematic, strong, little neutral knight character.
yeah. I mean, simple enough. It's a yeah. As you just said, it's a good cost, good trait, non-unique, and renown. What more can you ask for?
And we also picked potentially problematic cards.
I
Um,
I remember one of these was the crag. Is that right?
yes, so that's interesting,
Yeah,
right? So the first two
yeah,
weeks after the pack was released, the crag was everywhere, and it looked like it would be super strong. People were playing it and just rushing, playing Storm of Swords, playing the Wolf King and King Rob even, and Greyjoy and whatever, and getting a bunch of power, and it looked like it's borderline broken, and then just went completely quiet. Uh, has not had
yeah,
much impact after that. So I guess that's a case of people overreacting a little bit at the start.
yeah. No, definitely. I noticed that trend as well, and I was one of the people that was like concerned about how much it was being played. But I guess the reality is once it levels out and people compare it to other existing cards that are also, you know, gaining them power in a similar way, this is quite niche. We knew that from the start, where it's requiring Stark Kings. Uh, and I mean, I'm glad that it's not completely broken. That's good. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, I've even played it myself a little bit recently. I think I've played more Stark in the last few weeks than I have for basically the previous 5-6 years combined. And I have used the Crag a little bit, and yeah, it's got a few power, but yeah, not a problematic card in my experience. My choice was actually the Field of Fire. I thought at some point you could have a situation where there would be a complete lockdown because the dragons would be in play at the same time, giving everyone across the board -3 and no challenges could ever be pushed through. That situation also has not happened. There's
Yeah,
been support for the big dragons more than FFG ever basically supported them. Well, they came, I guess, at the very end of the game or towards the end. But yeah, they're getting more popular, and it could still happen that anything relating to the big dragons gets out of hand at some point. But so far, I think it's been fair. So we kind of missed the mark there on this being potentially problematic. Has not proved that way. Actually, so I've noted a couple of cards here that I guess were the most successful in this pack. One you could
mm,
possibly call problematic that we did not point out, the War Scorpion.
yeah,
That's found its way onto the restricted list, and actually at Stalek, the one deck that lost in the semifinals, in the top 4, abused it pretty badly. So it
yeah.
played the armies with Many-Faced God, and once an army found its way into the death pile, it used the agenda on an opponent's character and then killed it with War Scorpion. Now
Yeah.
this has been taken away because the Many-Faced God has been redesigned. There was an erratum,
Erupted.
yeah, to the Many-Faced
Yeah.
God, so you can no longer do that. Uh, but the other deck, the one that won Stalek, also had War Scorpions in there. Not using this, I guess you would say, exploit or the strong interaction, but still found it
Mm.
worth it because it's still, first of all, uh,
I think it was a
before you use
three of,
it,
wasn't it?
yes, I think so. Before you
Yeah.
use it, it's a +2 strength that is there. It has ambush, so it can work as a surprise, which Martell, honestly, the ambush cost and anything that's not a character with water gardens, we know how easy it is for them to get
Yeah.
it into play. And when the game is on the line, of course, being able to remove something, so not stand and remove, but just remove something from the challenge, can swing the games, and it's proved to be, uh, I guess, more efficient than we expected.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely the way that I'd see it as well. Because in testing, this one was tested a fair bit early on, I remember, and it felt like it was strong but acceptable. I think in hindsight, I mean, with more testing, we may have probably picked up that the ambush maybe wouldn't have been necessary. So, with that ambush being there, the idea was that the challenge action wouldn't really have as much value if it was open information. But that combined with a +2 strength, um, combined with the action, ended up being altered later on to be a bit more useful. Probably became a bit too good. Um, but yeah, I mean that happens sometimes. Like you can only test so much. You can't catch absolutely every scenario, and at least this isn't a scenario where it's busted. Although the MFG scenario where you're actually sort of breaking some game rules, maybe that is busted. That's more MFG than the card than War Scorpion. But I wouldn't say the card it was breaking anything. It's just very strong, and so that's we definitely saw that in Starlink.
Yeah, and so there was the plan was to have some anti-army support as well in the pack in general because the big armies were released prior to then, and yeah, the agenda was problematic. But also in the final there was an interesting situation because the final was against the big dragons, so there was
Yeah,
actually a challenge where uh, a big dragon attacked and War Scorpion was in play and could kill it, but there was a healing expertise to save it, so that was an interesting interaction. Just, I guess, casually running into dragons without specifically preparing your deck to deal with that like you do with the armies.
yeah.
Um, yes, and the other strong one, and that was arguably the winner of this entire pack, I think, was Sir Devon Lannister. The Lannister card that in the 6 cost slot has proven to be really efficient, either
Hmm.
complementing their set of characters or even replacing someone like Jaime in some decks. So there is renown, there is the power icon, which is rare in Lannister, and surprisingly efficient ability that I played the other day in the final of the Seven Kingdoms. We played against Lannister, and they had Sir Davin in every kind of deck, and it cost me so many cards throughout the game. Just randomly, I thought I could defend against it, and then there was Boy King on him that gained him power just from characters dying, and he wasn't even in the challenge, and he kind of choked my hand a little bit with that. So I think he's proven to be extremely good, and I see him a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree. Um, I guess the difference between Sir Davin and War Scorpion is Lannister. That sort of theme with Lannisters of big bombs and lords and all that, and I guess hand discard has been lacking. I guess a little bit competitively. So this being a really good card, it sort of doesn't feel as damaging as something like War Scorpion that's working alongside like a used plot deck that's already kind of good. Um, probably why we're not seeing Davin on the restricted list or anything, because it's sort of like a welcome strong card, I guess, right?
Yeah, uh,
Yeah.
not really. I would say that it's problematic. He's just extremely
Yeah.
strong. But yeah, if Lannister gets stronger, some people think that
Mm.
Lannister is the strongest faction at the moment, and there is some justification for that, I think. And yeah, we'll see what happens with
Yeah.
him. Okay, former champion we've already mentioned. Anything else that stands out to you that you've seen a lot in games?
Not that I've seen a lot of. Two that I did want to mention. Vanguard Leader, I actually really enjoyed, because as you probably know, one of my favorite agendas at the moment is Battle of the Trident, and having that commander trait available to anyone with Vanguard Leader has been really, really fun to just make different decks. Haven't like decks that you usually can't really have, um, and it works with Battle of the Trident now. I already knew that was sort of going to be the case, but actually putting that into practice has been a really fun experience. Um, and the second one I wanted to mention was I think we may have missed the mark a little bit with Battle of the Camps. I don't know if you've seen that in play at all, um, but I feel like it was a little bit under the mark of where we tried to hit. What do you think about that one?
Oh, you think it's not strong enough?
No, this is from my opinion, but I guess I just haven't seen it anywhere near as much as I thought I would see it. What's your experience with it?
Yeah,
Is it the
we
opposite?
played Battle of the Camps in our Baratheon Brotherhood deck in the Seven Kingdoms. It's been okay. It's like so Intimidate is strong in that deck as it is,
Yep.
but then this is basically double Intimidate, so you can get it
Yeah.
free on the military challenge, and I think it's done good work. Oh, there was of course briefly, before the change to the Many-Faced God, there was a chance
Buffalo.
to give someone the army
Yeah.
trait and then manipulate it again with this. But I think Battle of the Camps is played. I see it a bit. It has high
Fair
initiative,
enough. Yeah.
so usually can go first with that. And yeah, basically getting a quasi intimidate is worth it a lot of the time. Now I'm not sure with the agenda if Battle of the Trident has found a way to make this work. I
Mm.
actually have not played against Battle of the Trident in quite a long time now, so I'm not sure if it's really
It's
popular
because
anymore.
I haven't been playing online as much, Mia.
Mhm.
That's fair enough. I mean, I'm happy to be wrong with that, and it's always great to see cards being played. So that's just from what I noticed. But I also haven't been playing in tournaments, very recent tournaments, so that could be very different for me.
I think the ratio of cards that have found their way in decks is actually quite high with this one. So overall, I would say it's been a successful pack. Of course,
Mm.
not everything can be perfect. So okay, honestly, I've not seen Sir Gilbert Faring played the
Yeah.
Mirishai. There were concerns. Okay, Insight on Greyjoy never played at the 1 to 3 event. So that was at some point in the testing it was extremely strong, and then the change. It looks like a versatile card that does a little bit of everything, but then turns out that people want one specific effect, and there's other cards in Lannister that do it better. So this
Yeah.
actually has not been worth it. Uh, and a few others, I guess. Hero hasn't played. The Tyrell stuff, Mace hasn't been is not played yet, but that still has potential, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, Overall, it's okay. Okay, the Trident was the one card, the big one, right? That intentionally was released without much support, and so far people have generally, I guess, found that it's not worth it at the moment because you don't have enough locations to absorb all of this
Yeah.
uh, forced sacrifice, basically. So you're not going to keep the claim race. But
Of
there
course.
was always the plan, right, to support it with
Of
this
course. Yeah.
upcoming cycle.
Yeah, and people can see that in the unreleased cards for Mists of Memory that there are the three forks, red, green, blue, that very clearly support what the Trident's doing, in the form of fittingly in the form of military intrigue and power challenges respectively. So I'd be keen to see how the Trident turns out once the full cycle is released. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so this was the Spoils of War. We had quite a long time between releases. We had big tournaments like Stalek in between, so I think we can call it a success. But now our attention turns to, yes, to the new. Actually, let's not focus on true telling just yet. Let's talk a little bit about the cycle as a whole. So, Mists of Memory. Is it Mists or
Yep.
Mist of Memory?
Mists with an S.
Mists. Okay. So this is a cycle kind of like FFG used to do with
Yep.
120 cards, and now we have a little clearer picture, I guess, of how the cards are going to be released. Steven, right?
Yes. So the intention from the start, and most of this is outlined in the release article that you showed earlier. The intention from the start was to develop a large batch of cards all at once, 120, which is almost certain exactly how FFG did their development. And then once, like obviously testing all that would take longer for those 120 cards as opposed to something like Spoils of War that was 30 cards. But the idea was once that development is done, everything gets locked in place, and then slowly, the art team and the wording refinement team and everyone in the design team who is working on releasing stuff can slowly get through 20 cards at a time. And every 2 months or so this year, 2024, you can expect to see a 20 card pack. And that way it's relieving a lot of stress from really difficult areas within the design team. It usually took a lot of effort for the art team, for example, to get 30 cards out within a short time span. This way, they're dealing with 20 cards every 2 or so months, which is a lot more manageable. So that's why you might see a whole bunch of unreleased Mists of Memory cards on Thrones DB, but then slowly over time will trickle out 20 card packs at a time, which are themed packs, loosely themed, I guess, with sort of similar mechanics or based on the name of the pack. And that'll be going on through 2024, which then allows the design team to focus on something new.
Okay, so I guess the playtesting is done for these cards, and the text that people see on ThronesDB for the cards that are unreleased as of yet, this is final now, right? So it's not going to change much.
Pretty much, yeah. As you know, there would be some minor wording tweaks or maybe very, very minor mechanical tweaks, but the whole idea of the card is remaining unchanged. That was the point from the start. Development's done, so that way the design team can start to focus on, what's coming next, rather than what is slowly being released.
Okay, and with all of that said, we can have a look at the first chapter pack in this cycle. It's called The True Telling. So once again, just briefly, the release article I will link in the description. You can read it. It's quite interesting to read, and there is also files there for you to arrange your printing. And yes, we have the cards here. We'll go through them one by one and have some thoughts, maybe some insight from Steven about how some decisions were made. And okay, so I guess the order we can randomize a little bit, Steven. So where would you like to start?
All right, I'm going to spin my wheel and decide which faction is going to go first, rather than making a decision. And it looks like we're starting with Stark.
Okay, perfect. So Stark gets. So you will see that most combinations here in throughout this cycle will be character and non-character, right? For every faction, so 2 cards per faction. Not always exactly, but most of the time it will be so. There is a character, and it's Karstark Lancer, which is a card I have opinions about, so I have criticized this design a few times because it's passive power. So when this guy is sacrificed or killed, you will be able to get a power as an interrupt, so before he even leaves play. And yeah, kind of like the Greyjoy acolyte of the waves. So it's not like it's something we have not seen before, and the acolyte is not broken. But yeah, just with the Fat Cat decks, I've had my share of losses against them. So this was not something I was looking forward to. And with this being Karstark, so their location is Karholt, right, from the story, and there is some thematic connection here because, of course, if Karholt is in play, uh, you will be able to get the power, but the opponent, if they don't have a winter plot, will not. It says if able, so it will always trigger even if one of the players cannot actually gain power.
Yeah. So it's more of a subtle synergy with car hold, where you're just preventing your opponents from getting the benefits outside of just yourself.
Yeah, so far it's not made that much of an impact, so it's not actually won any games, but we'll see how long that lasts. The icons, so I think throughout the testing process it was a Bicon, right? But then it lost the power icon towards the end.
Yes, yeah. So one thing that I think like about near the end of development actually, we sort of went through all 120 cards and tried to determine, the icon spread. Because one thing we have noticed is generally there's a lot of Bicon characters that are being released that, to be honest, a lot of them don't need to be Bicons. They just they're more about the ability rather than their challenge participation. This card was originally I think it was a 2 cost uh, military power, 1 strength, and we decided that the power isn't really adding any value to the card outside of just being a better challenge participant, I guess. And so this was one of the cards we focused on stripping to to a monocon. I think it also came with a name change as well because it was originally Carstark Bannerman rather than Carstark Lancer. It would be strange for a Bannerman to not really have a power icon that sort of fits that theme. So Carstark Lancer with a military icon and 2 for 2. And I think that was the right choice. Um, we'll see it going out into future chapter packs. There will be a few more monocons out for factions.
Yeah, so at this point I will just remind everyone, of course, that the rules FAQ section here on ThronesDB is there for every card, so we've added clarifications for anything that you might anything that might come up that might be unclear. In case anything is not answered here, feel free, of course, to ask me. And maybe if there's something obvious I've missed, it can even be added to ThronesDB. Otherwise, happy to answer any questions. So this is saying basically what I just said, that it resolves even if someone cannot gain power on their locations, or if someone has no locations at all to choose. Yes, so the other star card, the location, Lonely Hills. So this one is quite specific. It reduces the number of plot cards in your use pile. Not that you would take anything out, but just you are considered to have one fewer. And this has obvious connection to House Amber and their cards. So Greyjoy is a popular card that in the early game can stand when he wins a military challenge, which is useful because he has Intimidate and you want him participating in multiple challenges. But then he gets turned off, and with Lonely Hills you of course have a chance of prolonging this, and it's non-unique, so you can even have I guess more of them in play, and then you get him for longer. And there's other cards that are I don't even know from the top of my head right now, precisely because they stop working so early in the game. But with Lonely Hills, I guess there is some chance for them.
Yeah. This similar to our discussion with Dragonstone. for the Spoils of War. This is a card that can only grow. I don't expect it to see a whole lot of play straight away, but House Umber, that's a fairly large house in the north. It's something that could easily be expanded on, uh, even though there already are quite a few House Umber cards. More specifically, House Umber with the low use plot theme, that's easily expandable, and it's just going to continue to add a value to this sort of card. Um, this does obviously have the downside of being prone to assault. But I think that's sort of nice seeing those little niche mechanics here and there where assault actually gets value by kneeling something. Um, but there's obviously the benefit, as you just said, of it being non-unique as well. So if you have three on the board, one of them being knelt, who cares? Um, it's a very small card that I'm still looking forward to expanding upon in the future.
Yeah, we've said this a few times about cards, right? This may not be that great right now, but it can be supported in the future. And sometimes you say that and doesn't really happen. Years go by and there's no support. But I think this one is a perfect example where it actually could be, because it grows stronger with any House Amber card that is released, assuming that it follows the same mechanics. So surely the more there are, the more useful it will be to have Lonely Hills. There is one interaction already that also can be to your advantage if you have it. So the Wars to Come gives Price away. That's the downside of the agenda. If you have Lonely Hills, it will basically give you more rounds where Price is not active yet. So that's one thing. The other, so I should say this here, because this is quite a big one. So there is a chance to basically break the game if Change of Plans is played, because it can theoretically now be played in a way to remove your last plot, and the rules do not actually instruct you what to do in such a situation. So there is the next time there will be an FAQ update that is not just a restricted list, but actual rulings. There will be something added to address this, but we've already basically come to the decision that rather than do complicated wording to stop this from happening, it's just easier to say that if the last plot somehow is placed in the use pile or something, if you run out of plots outside of the usual process of revealing them, it's just like if you had revealed the last one, you just take your use pile back and the game continues.
Yeah.
And, no problem there.
So in the future, there's probably going to be an FAQ entry just to, like, in the FAQ document, just to clarify that. But yeah, I think that keeping cards simple is usually better than adding complicated wording. So I'm glad that we stuck to that for this one, and that very niche scenario will be addressed later if it ever comes up.
Okay, so you want to do the next one, Steven?
Yes, let's spin the wheel to see what is next. We have... Oh, lucky you. We're doing Baratheon.
Okay. So
Right.
Baratheon actually has quite impactful cards in this one. So the first one is Beric Dondarrion, a Bara version. So this is early in the story, I guess, and it's yes, I have played this quite a bit, and we have seen it already played since the pack was out. The other day there was an online event where Bara Kohor reached the final with Beric added as a potential big guy with that you wanted in multiple challenges, either with Azor Ahai Reborn or with Lightbringer. So it's a character with printed renown, which is great, and it's a character that when it wins a challenge, basically has an option of doing like a black cells that stops a character participating for that round, or it does something like saving the kingdom if it targets a character that is already knelt and keeps them locked for the standing phase, which is incredibly strong. For me personally, when I play Baratheon, I like to go second because if you play control, that's usually better. and I found that going second he's not that great, because then you have to keep him standing when the opponent does their challenges, simply because he works on attack only. So not that impactful there, but in constructive Baratheon decks that like to go first, maybe with a little bit of intimidate, he is quite a powerful one. So could be one of the most impactful, I think, in this pack.
Yeah. Beric was early in Mr. Merry development. He was actually one of the first ones that we had started off with, and we had a very complicated ability beforehand that had something to do with like, you know, herding characters with low icons, with the idea that in the story, Beric starts off essentially being tasked to find the mountain and arrest him, I guess, or put him to the King's Justice or the Hand's Justice. Sorry. And so we want to try to mimic that a little bit with like Seven Cost Gregor. Seven Cost Gregor being a high strength, low icon character, but that ended up just being complicated. And so I'm glad that we stuck to something very straightforward and simple, because it's just providing value in a very unique way, in a way that a 7 cost character should be doing. And so I'm pretty happy with the result here. And yeah, it's like the artwork as well. Pretty happy with how this turned out.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to using him. I think is the first. Well, actually, the Smuggler Army is another big that was released recently, but something to put alongside characters like Robert and Stannis from the past, I think would be refreshing. Uh, and yes, so the other card in the same event where Beric did well, I played Lady Maria, and I was lost all of my games. So, but actually in playtesting, I did win one of the playtesting events with Lady Maria, which actually is a really fun card to use. So this one has changed a little bit as well. Um, it used to work with anything, right? And now only works with captains or smugglers.
Yeah. This was one that I believe Hanno had actually mentioned a long time ago that smugglers could use. And it started off being, I think, prior to when we actually even started developing it, it was just a reaction to winning as an attacker. So you wouldn't kneel it, it wouldn't be captain or smuggler. Uh, and that was with the intent to work with someone like Crane Sethmantes, and I'm not sure I'm saying that name right, um, and other kneel warship effects. But we thought it better to make this a more it's a strong location on its own. So we thought it better to hone it into captain and smugglers, and with the cost of kneeling it, I think originally it was actually 3 cost. So we brought it down to 2, made it so you kneel it. It brings more value to cards like Cell Sales, which allow you to actually reuse it in that sort of way. Um, I Another one that I'm pretty happy with that with how it turned out. The only thing I would have liked to do was slim the text a bit more, but there's really no way you can do that with this sort of ability. I'm surprised we managed to fit it all into a card and make it look good.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, so there is a chance to stand it also with Sir Eldon. So that was kind of the worry that it would find its way into just any Baratheon deck, because it's generally useful. So now kind of have to play it in Smugglers unless you want to do Eldon, and but still you need some of those to trigger it in the first place. But yeah,
Yeah.
Eldon and Celsius can stand it. So I've played it quite a bit now, and it's not really a new mechanic, because Valyrian's crew can already do the same thing.
Yeah.
Of course, keeping a location in play is more likely usually than keeping a big character that has to survive all the resets, and it's not even unique, so that you would be able to dupe it. And it's Baratheon cannot really orchestrate the right cards finding their way onto underneath Lady Maria, I guess. So it's a little bit random, and but yeah, if you do it every round, bound to find something useful. But there is quite a range, so sometimes you go from having a, let's say, a useless econ like Hard Regrow that you cannot even theoretically use, from for instance, finding a Varys against the reset deck that wants to play him, and then you mess that plan up which is beautiful when it happens. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's another support for smugglers, and I think they should be playable, but I don't know how competitively viable they are at the moment. But I think this is one of the better warships for them because, to be fair, they have been all over the place. They have some really weird, no synergy between them, and some weird stuff like the Valyrian that is just seems completely useless at first glance. And I think this one fits anyway. It fits anywhere where sales or any smuggler is basically. So yeah, looking forward to using this one.
Yeah, nice. All right.
Um,
Shall I
yes,
spin the wheel?
go
All
ahead.
right.
Let me just say in the meantime that well, actually, let's not spin the wheel, and I'll talk about it later.
All right. Well, fittingly, we are now moving to Greyjoy. The next two cards.
Okay, so Greyjoy has some drowned gut stuff. And
Yes.
yes, Victarion. So the problem number one with Victarion, there are two others, and one of them is completely broken, and the other one fine as well. So this one, I guess, needed to be good to have any chance, and remains to be seen. What do you think? Is it good enough?
I think the difference between this and the previous two Victorians is their aim and the intention. So this sort of card, it's hard to compare it to the other two because it's fitting a completely different deck than the other two, which I think is a good thing. Because if you're trying to compare it to a broken card and a decent card, anything's going to be underwhelming that isn't already broken. So the way that this turned out, obviously fitting Drown God quite well and asking for some interesting relore mechanics, which is possible, but it'd be less likely to happen. I think it's a really good addition to that theme that can be built over time. Um, I know in playtesting we were, playing around with and considering how a Relore Drown God deck would work, and it didn't really work super well. But I don't think the intent was to have it, be really strong. That part's a bit more of a gimmick in my mind. That may be relevant later on, may not be relevant later on. Regardless of that, it's still a 5 cost, 5 strength Bicon that, at the very least, can uh, trigger on himself, and then you can stand him to be an absolute beast. That's sort of like the competitive scenario that I see. The intention was a bit more of a fun card.
Yeah, so in pure Drowned God, it's a character with renown that provides a military icon where they usually struggle, so that's fine. But yeah, the Voltron potential, if you want to do something crazy, is the interesting
Yeah,
one. So if he finds a stand, so he can get two keywords, but usually the mix of traits doesn't work out. So it would be needing himself, and then with one idea was to play Azor High Reborn on him, where you don't particularly care whether he's knelt, you just need the lores uh, to do challenges, and he participates with his two keywords. And the other was to play Queen's Guard, where of course you spend his reaction to need himself, but then he stands anyway. And he even gains
yeah,
immunity, so if Delena is in play, he gains immunity to her ability, so she will not stop him standing, which is... I think if you play Delena, you're just happy not to see the 7 cost Victarion anyway, so I guess you'll survive if this guy is in play.
yeah.
Mm, yeah, looking forward to someone trying to Voltron him, but maybe we'll just see him in Drowned God and nowhere else, I don't know, but looks like a fun card and beautiful art as well on this one.
Oh, by far my favorite art in this pack. The artwork you would have seen in the design team that we actually had a different artwork that was sort of mediocre, and then very last minute, the artist for this one, Nikolai, had responded to us, and we wanted this artwork from the start, and I'm very glad that we got it.
Yeah, looks quite impressive.
Yeah.
And there's more Drowned God support in the form of a plot. So we are getting plots for each faction in this one.
Yes.
And this one actually so looks slightly weird at first glance because it gives Drowned God's ambush, but really the idea, okay, you can ambush from hand, but the idea is to be able to get another way to play characters from your death pile, and this time it would happen, of course, in the challenges phase.
Yeah.
To either to complement what Tarly the Trans-Drowned is doing, or to replace his ability a little bit in some way, because of course there is a new one, a new version of him coming out that you are also could be interested in playing, and then of course losing the original Tarly ability is a big hit, and yeah, this plot potentially to the rescue, I guess.
Yeah. We wanted to, when we're looking at these in-faction plots, we were looking at themes that, I mean, the previous two in-faction plots weren't really touching. And one of the biggest themes for Greyjoy has been Drowned God. And the other two sort of support them in a different way, the unopposed and the discard pile theme. I'm really glad that we had this ability pretty early on. It was mostly just the stats that we had to edit throughout playtesting to, fine tune the best way for it. We know one usual caveat to Drown God is economy, and more specifically paying for those Drowned Gods to come out of the dead pile, usually with someone like Tal or other abilities. And so we're aware that that's sort of the thing holding this back from being a problem. If there's ever a Drowned God deck that breaks with economy, then this is probably going to be a very strong plot to play. But I mean, realistically, you're probably playing this in any Drowned God deck, right?
Yeah, you could. They tend to rush pretty quickly to a victory in the, let's say, mid game, mid to late game. You can do it early because the economy is not set up and you don't have a base of characters in the dead pile, and then you try to win quickly. But yeah, for gold, it's, I think, similar with the Night's Watch plot. I think there is a Night's Watch plot that does something like this, right? Also, that also has doesn't have the economy to support the ability fully, so that it would end up broken. I think that's
Yes,
a
yeah.
good
The
call.
watch needs good man. One that's in an unreleased upcoming pack in the future. Yeah, it's a similar idea to this, but a little bit. It has slightly better stats for that reason. Yeah.
And also the first plot with the Drown gut trait, so it doesn't have any of the usual plot traits like Scheme or Edict or anything that would interact with other stuff, but it is a Drowned gut card in case it's ever relevant on a plot. So far it doesn't really do anything, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's three factions done. What's the next one?
All right, let's spin the wheel again. We've only got a few left, and I think it's gonna be. Oh, just ticked over to Martell. Thank Christ, that's a good time.
Okay, so we have Sand Snake in this one. So Skimming Snake is a non-unique one, and it's support for basically the icon control in some way. So you can make a character not contribute strength, which is well, whether it's better or worse is debatable, but doesn't stand the character. So it's another one of those abilities that ruins basically a challenge for the opponent. And it has Shadow to work with Rihanna Martell, who likes, of course, cards coming out of shadows and works with anything that has to do with challenge icons. However, the downside, of course, is that this is a monocon that itself is not that great in challenges. So, what's your
Yeah.
experience, Steven? Have you tried it?
Yes, yeah. This is the first card I played with this pack released. I have a few decks that I've tried it in. I've tried it in an Icon Viper deck. I've tried it in a Bastard Viper deck. I've tried it in just a regular Shadows deck. The thing I think I like most about this, which sort of reflects why I've tried it in those three different styles of decks, is it's not a very evasive card. It's not a very problematic card, but it can fit. It has little elements of it that fit in different themes. So, for example, you've got a non-unique Sand Snake character or Sand Snake / Bastard character that works super well with a lot of Sand Snake themes. Like Bastard Viper obviously wants as many people on the board as possible. Same thing with what's the name of their the location that gives Sand Snakes +1 strength?
Brimstone.
Um, Brimstone. That's it. Um, and with cards like Nymeria, 5-cost Nymeria, giving them all icons. Doria Sand growing in strength with the amount of sand stakes in play, which is super vital that this is a non-unique. That's the reason why it's helping quite a lot. But then you have the other elements of it, as you just mentioned with Shadow Ariane. You have that. You also have something that works with has an enters play reaction, which is very very good for something like Brimstone. So it allows you to actually reuse a Sand Snake's ability. None of them really have anything super useful other than Doria Sand, who requires a lot of setup. None of them have an ability that you can really reuse in that sort of way. So this brings a lot of value to those sort of cards that are a little bit lacking. It can provide something in those sort of decks. One card, particularly as well, that I've been playing quite a bit with her in testing and in live, is Harmond Allah, allowing her to be an ambush 2 character that can then be returned back to your hand with Brimstone and brought back into play to trigger her twice. I love that. So I'm pretty happy with how this card turned out. I agree. Similar to the argument with Cast Dark Lancer, this was one of the ones where it doesn't need to be strong in challenges because it's doing something else entirely. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in the end.
Yeah, so I think without any challenge icon control, it's I guess it's difficult to expect characters to have a single icon. I mean, there's a range of characters you can target. If you can get Drogon or something like that, it's great. But you're not getting a Randall Tarly or someone like that, so you need a little bit of support there, which I guess it's not that natural to Sand Snakes, but not that difficult to achieve in Martell. And in an Rihanna Martell deck, of course, it's the reaction works, even the timing works out pretty well here, because if she comes out of shadows, of course, you can trigger the icon removal first, and then you can see if the character has the the two challenge icons or not, and you can make it not contribute strength, which is great. And we know Core Arehotok is still pretty good. He removes characters directly, but even if they just don't contribute strength, is already most of the time achieves the same thing. And really the thing is whether you stand them or not. That makes a difference between a good and a mediocre card. And this one, does not stand them.
Yeah. You're definitely on the money though with the challenge icon part. Definitely keeps this in check. In those sand snake scenarios, there's Nymeria Sand, and you probably have Starfall in that deck. There's not a whole lot though. Bastard, Shadow City Bastards as well, likely. But there's not a whole lot that's boosting her. So in that scenario, Shadow Ariane really works well with the reaction, whilst the natural elements of the cards, like the traits and the non-uniqueness, works really well with Sand Snakes. It's when you can combine the two that you're going to have a really good deck that I'm looking forward to building.
Yes, and speaking of icon controls, so we have a House Skorgal card here, a Bed of Scorpions, which is an event, and it's a targeted kill, so it kills participating characters during an intrigue challenge, which means it can be played around. Most of the time, I guess, Martell can force characters into challenges, which is actually an underused mechanic, underplayed mechanic, so looking forward to that getting more support here. A kill event that also has had some changes, right, in the design process. It used to have, if I remember correctly, a kind of a weird ability where it would kill a character without an intrigue icon that participated in the intrigue challenge, which required some mid-challenge icon control, but it's been cleaned up a little bit so that it's straightforward to use now.
Yeah, that was the original intent, was to go with the theme that we're building with House Corgile of being like aggressive icon control. where if you were doing an intrigue challenge, choose and kill a participating character without an intrigue icon. But in testing, it felt like there were too many moving parts that were required to actually have it provide any value. And not necessarily that it was like a very bad card, but there were just so many other events that you'd rather put in that style of deck than to go with better scorpions. Like you may as well just go with Tears of Lys if that's your aim. And so this was actually a suggestion by someone else to just remove that. And if I'm entirely honest, I was concerned. I thought I was thinking that this would be too strong. But if non-Martell fans in the design team are saying it's probably fine, then I step back and maybe I'm just being a bit too harsh. I have no idea. I'm glad to say that it's not completely breaking things, at least not yet, or at least not that I've seen. I could be wrong there, though. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if people know it exists and expect it in your deck, there is clear counterplay, right? We had Burn forever since the beginning of the game. We have the Direwolf event that kills participating characters. So I guess you just have to learn not to basically walk into it. I guess you could argue that that's maybe something that Martell wants to achieve anyway, so that you leave stuff unopposed, they clear the way for Duran's game or something like that with the threat, which is fair enough, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so apologies in advance. I will try to speak a little more softly now because it is properly the middle of the night here and I can't wake people up. So
I can still yell.
you can, not a problem. So give us the next one, Stephen.
So one more thing I was going to add about the Martell cards was I'm very happy with how the AI art turned out for both of these. Both of these AI are AI artworks, and you wouldn't really know unless if you looked at the bottom left and saw it was made by an AI generator.
Definitely beautiful art on this too.
Next we have Lannister.
Okay, so we
All
have
right.
Myrcella Baratheon, which was a tricky one to balance because of the first Myrcella that Lannister had, which is a really strong card. But this one slightly different. So the other one stays in play and does challenges. This one escapes the board and lets you do an additional intrigue challenge, which of course can be really strong. And so Lannister has some obvious support for that with Cersei that doesn't kneel. This also lets you threaten Rhaen's trigger in multiple challenges, or basically any kind of win by 5 where you need to, as the defender, you need to contend with multiple challenges. And of course, like I always say with cards that have this ability, ever since the Hound was printed in the first cycle all those years ago, when it looked like it had a negative ability to compensate for his high strength, really the cards that escape the board on their own have proven to be usually pretty good, because that's something you want to do. It's not a penalty that you have to return her to hand, right?
Yeah. It's a cheap card, but it's easily one of the ones you can cheat in. Like that 2-cost location, I think it's a warship. Seems like a really good target for her. Just every turn get a free, every turn get an extra intrigue challenge. I'm really happy with how she turned out. I think she's contended to be one of the strongest cards in this pack. Is that right?
Yes, I have not actually played that much with the new cards, so playing in the Seven Kingdoms, we were a pack behind there. So that's been my main focus for the last 2 months, basically. And we'll see. But I've heard the opinions from people that she is extremely strong, even in, for instance, in the Manifest God Clansman deck to give you additional challenges has proven to be good. And of course, we'll get to. Is there a. Yeah, Castamir is the next one. that also, of course, is a big threat, and she works with that as well. So
Yeah, that dark and scary card.
mm. Yeah. So well, let's tackle it. So this one, after you win an intrigue challenge by 5, you can apply military claim. Now, okay, doesn't sound that scary in normal circumstances when you have a late summer feast or something revealed, but of course, if it's to claim and there is already a claim replacement trial by combat in Lannister that can then do some pretty crazy claim raise and basically go aggro with that, along with the plot, the spider's web, that I guess is kind of a forgotten plot. You sometimes see it in Reigns, but that can raise the claim on intrigue challenges, which will, of course, apply to this military claim. And they have additional challenges available. So at some point, there will be maybe a win by 5 that they can trigger this on. Okay, so you have to sacrifice Castamere, so it's not like it's there to be repeated every round. It will trigger once. You can get it back, or you can replay it. You can replay a different copy, but yeah, if you trigger it once in the right circumstances, it could be game over, right? If it's imagine the original free folk where you applied
Yeah.
to claim military on top of the military that you were going to get anyway. So if that happens and the opponent doesn't have a board to sustain it, that can be game ending, right?
Yeah, yeah. I remember when we started off with this cycle, we came in with very specific events or locations or people, and we thought that making those cards feel impactful was going to be pretty important. So something like Castamere, which is obviously very well known for Reigns of Castamere and everything Tywin did back then. It's sort of summarized in the quote actually for Castamere there. We wanted to make sure that when this hit the board, you got a little bit scared. That's sort of the point. Um, Mechanically, one thing I really loved to see when we were testing this card was the amount of other cards it was starting to bring out of the binder. Core Cersei, for example, although you do see her here and there, finds some incredible value with this card. Same thing with the Spider's Web that you mentioned, although that's fairly used in Brains of Castamere. I think that's quite fitting that this actually works quite well with Castamere as well. And I even saw Sir Kevin Lannister, getting this back into play in playtesting. I thought that was really interesting. It feels nice to see a card like this making other cards better. Whether it's too strong or not, I guess that's up to the community and for people to decide with how they play it. But whether it's impactful or not, it's sort of the point of the card. It should be impactful. But as you said, it's a sacrifice. It's meant to be one-time use outside of some niche scenarios like Kevin Lannister and anything else people can chalk up.
Yeah, just to make it clear, so I've put it in the rules FAQ here. So this is not a claim replacement, it's on top of the intrigue claim. So after you apply intrigue claim, you get both. You get this and you get the military. Yes,
Yeah.
so when we get to the potentially problematic or scary cards at the end of this video, I guess this is one of the candidates, and the art quite fitting. I guess it's all a little
Very scary.
grim, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
All right.
leaves a few more. I think we have 3 more, right? We have Targaryen and Tyrell. And what else?
Or
Night's Watch.
if we include neutral,
Okay, so what's the next one?
we have Tyrell going next.
Okay, Red Apple Knight. So I've been saying throughout the playtesting process that I look forward to this one. It's an interesting ability and never really found the time to test it. So this one is this guy gets plus X strength if you control a single Tyrell Knight character. So let's say that's a big one, like imagine the 4-cost Knight of Flowers that grows with any event you play. This guy will scale along with the Knight of Flowers basically. So if that guy is 7 strength, this Red Apple Knight will be 1 plus 7. So sounds strong, not a disaster if you don't have one, because it's not like Lancel, the Lannister character, that has printed strength X, and then if you don't have another lord, it's basically 0. This guy has 1 by default, so he will always work in some way. However, there is an opportunity cost here, right? The deck building restriction, basically, where you cannot afford to have a bunch of knights, because if you have 2 in play, they will block him, and you also cannot afford to have none in play, because then he's a little bit sad.
Yes. Yeah, this was a card where we saw Green Apple Knight, sorry, and that, as we all know, is a very popular card for knights. And obviously, with Red Apple Knight, you sort of want to Green Apple Fossways and Red Apple Fossways are sort of butting heads with each other. Um, we wanted to look to get something opposite. And I mean, the first place that we saw was the same thing as Green Apple Knight, but it doesn't kneel for defense. But having both of those in the same deck is just going to be a nightmare for any opponent. Having something that doesn't kneel for attack, or doesn't kneel for defense. So then we thought about let's in fact look at a mechanical opposition. So more specifically, a mechanical, or a deck built for a different deck, an opposite side of deck. Green Apple Knight is all about having a wide spread of knights. Cheap knights usually, and winning off that way. We've seen that deck before. We've seen, is it Tony for the King, the one that gives them all renown? Or am I
Yes.
thinking of a different? Yep. We've seen that deck before, and it works quite well lately. And so we thought, okay, how about the opposite scenario that I feel is a bit underused, of having attacking or defending alone. So more specifically, having a smaller board but having a stronger board. And so that's why we went with this sort of direction with Red Apple Knight. And in playtest, I actually playtested this one quite a lot, a surprisingly large amount, because I don't usually touch Tyrell cards that much. And within a deck, a completely different style of deck, which is built around winning alone, essentially, this was huge. And I think one of the main reasons why that was the case was, you mentioned it before with Knight of Flowers, strength pump or strength buffing. So this essentially doubles any sort of strength buff that you have on one character, because he's also going to be getting it. It's a passive effect. It's nothing you can really stop unless if you've milked him. And so combining it with things like 5-cost High Garden or Brienne the Blue, or other, even big strength or even small strength buffs, it just makes this card insanely strong. And the reason why we went with this ability without some sort of non-kneeling is because, unlike the Green Apple Knight, this can sort of work with 2 cards. It's a one that it just requires one other card to really work, whilst Green Apple Knight sort of requires a wide board of cards. It's a lot more cards involved in the combo. And that was quite well reflected in playtesting, where multiple times I'd have one of these, or even two of these cards out, and one unique knight, and no one could stop my board. At least not. Intrigue is a bit of a weakness in that deck, but no one could get through when I have 3 10 strength characters. It was really good to see, but it is a completely different deck to what knights usually are.
Yeah, although if you do want to go wide with the knights, there is one advantage here. So he is strength 1, printed strength 1, which means the crown lets you keep him against the reset, and with Green Apple Knight they are as well. So you have potentially 6 non-uniques there, and Tyrell has the Arbor Knights as well. There's a Wing Knight in neutrals, and Sir Colin. So there are quite a few that you could get through the crown, if you can imagine wanting to play a tourney, but the opponent tries to reset before you get a good amount of knights, but you crown just before then, and then you have the tourney after. So that's the dream, I guess, but I don't know how realistic it is, since like you say, you want to basically go with one big one rather than a spread of small ones here.
And why this can still be slotted into a standard knight deck, but similar to the argument I made with Field of Fire. It's asking for a different deck. It's asking for something else rather than what already exists, and I feel like that's sort of what designing your cards is about: encouraging newness rather than just supporting what already works. So, if this doesn't get played at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised. But I can see there being a scenario where someone finds a deck where it works, maybe with alongside some future releases in Mist of Memory. I can see that coming out and being a really strong deck, and then the value of this card will just be seen. That's what I'm sort of hoping for, with a similar argument as Field of Fire.
Right, and the other card Tyrell has here is High Garden Treasury. Now this is support for another mechanic that probably needs it. So after a character is removed from a challenge, you gain gold. So basically an icon card, but works in the challenges phase up to 3 times per round. It is unique, so it's 3 at the most. But there are particularly the Wall of Roses, so works on multiple characters potentially. And you can get gold for each that is removed, and you just have other single remove effects like Offer of a Peach and Core High Garden and stuff like that. And those are the decks usually that will be able to spend challenges phase gold with the Tyrell Ambush and the Tyrell Events package, right?
Yeah, yeah. This card here, similar to something like Lonely Hills, in my opinion, it's one of the more boring cards, I guess, but it's also one of them cards that is going to be useful. And I think right now it is useful, but I say going to be useful because there are also more. Um, like one of our focuses has been supporting removed from the challenge cards. Um, this is one that, as you just mentioned, that sort of deck can usually use gold quite a lot in challenges phase, and in playtesting. Personally, I didn't playtest this a lot, but I know some other people in the design team definitely did, and they definitely found it useful. So it's one of the simple, maybe boring cards, but it finds its uses in the deck that it's intended for.
Yeah, I think if you build around it, of course you're going to include ways to spend the gold. I think, is it Marjorie's influence? Let me just show you that. Mm. So this one has never really been played because it wants you to pay 1 gold each time. But that's exactly the kind of card that would work, right? So you kneel Marjorie's influence, you pay 1 gold to remove someone from the challenge, and then you get the gold back, and you can potentially
Yeah.
remove that character again. Or actually, this needs the attachment, so it doesn't work. But other copies of this, or the High Garden that also wants you to pay 1 gold, or you could
Yeah.
just actually let the gold add up, and then you can pay something like Olena's Informant to have your own
Or
benefit later.
does mirror red wine as well was one key card that was brought up. This does support her quite a bit.
Yeah, I remember I tried playing her. I'll show you Smell as well. So I tried playing her in the 8 regions, and I had some gold in the challenger space in my decks usually, and then the Iron Throne offers you triggers, right? That you maybe don't remember yourself, and offers me this Mira's trigger, and I click on her. I say sure, right? Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I reduce the strength, even though I don't plan to actually do anything with that character for the rest of the phase, and maybe it's doesn't even have the icon to hurt me in a different challenge type, and then I try to spend my gold and I see it's gone. And then I read the mirror again and see, okay, you're supposed to pay for this ability. And yeah, having
You just
High
get
Garden
it.
Treasury would help, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So simple card, but I'm happy to see it here.
Okay, so Night's Watch or
All right.
Targaryen?
Or neutral. It is Targaryen.
Okay, so we have a character, Three Brothers. This is non-unique. It's an army and quite interesting. So when it enters play, you can search for an ally with 3 cost or lower and place it in your discard pile. So not in play. It's not one of those tempo plays that just bring something in that we've seen in Targaryen and sometimes in Lannister as well. But so what's the point in having something in your discard pile? There are 2 cards that work with this. There is Freedman, which you can get out of the discard pile whenever you win a challenge by 5 or more, and the other card we know with this mechanic is Mother's Man, that does this when a character is killed by a card effect and both have the trait, and they can be put in the discard pile. So there is always a worry with cards that search the entire deck. We've seen it with Barrel and Scout, so cannot miss. Even Delena Florin, for instance, cannot possibly miss, assuming you've put them in your deck. So it's always going to hit. But I think in this particular case, because you're not getting immediate tempo from that, putting it in your discard pile by itself basically does nothing, right? Something else needs to happen for that card to then eventually come into play. So maybe not worth worrying about it as much, I guess, for the full deck search here.
Yeah, this is another one of those similar to Heidegger Treasury, quote unquote boring cards that is just doing something ready to set up another play. And it was actually one of our considered cards for turning into a monocon, but our reason to keep it was more that the strength of the reaction or strength of the ability didn't really line up with the other ones we were looking at. For example, like Scheming Snake or Cast Dark Lancer. It's more there to just provide setup for something later on. And so it being on the board was actually a bit more relevant. It needed to provide something a little bit more. So it has decent stats, like 2 for 2 Bicon, with the army trait, which can be useful, depending on the deck that you're using. But it's mostly there just to set up other little guys, little cards getting put into the discard pile, ready to come into play. Yeah.
Yeah, armies usually are bigger, so having a cheap one for just for instance for the Trident agenda, we've seen that use Poor Fellows pretty much in all of the decks because it's such an easy trigger, and yeah, having an option to do that and 2 icons should help as well in Targaryen.
Yeah.
And the other card they have is the Plot. So as far as beautiful art goes, this one is pretty impressive as well. And the ability is can be infectable. So this is a claim replacement. It's not on top of normal claim, but whenever there would be normal claim for military or intrigue, you can instead basically turn it into claim power. But the cost is having to kneel a dragon. So you can do it on multiple challenges if you have the dragons to kneel. So how do you use this is the question. So I guess since the cost is kneeling a character, do you think of the hatchlings first, or would you go bigger?
Well, I initially thought of the hatchlings, and when we first had this card designed, I actually thought it was going to be a very weak card. But I was easily proven wrong. Where sure you can use this with the hatchlings, but it actually found quite a bit of value with is it the Rhaegal that stands seven cost Rhaegal that stands itself himself and another dragon or Stormborn?
Yeah. So the the little regal stands a Stormborn character when it wins a challenge, and the bigger one, the biggest one, also stands a dragon or a Stormborn, and then itself. The middle one stands
Exactly.
from a card being killed.
Yes. So this one, the 7 cost one, I completely didn't realize that could work, and with that in mind, that's really cool. So it means that you can both trigger Rhaegal to stand himself or another dragon, well, likely another dragon and himself if you got to, and also trigger Dance of Dragons by kneeling one of those other dragons to trigger it. So I'm honestly really happy with how this turned out. I didn't I haven't seen a lot of it played online, but at the same time, I haven't seen Targaryen recently. That's just me, with my crappy time zone. Um, uh, Knowing that this works, I'm happy with how it turned out. Initially, though, I was concerned it was just going to be a really weak card, but then in playtesting, it was getting like sixes, and I'm like, okay, sure, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a big swing, and it's not on the one challenge. You can do it twice potentially. So, uh, but you have to have it set up right. So you have to say, okay, now I'm going to close, or now I'm going to make a big difference in the mid game. Early on, moving power is not happening because there is no power, or at least not enough of it to take it, or to for that to even matter. But yeah, the power swings in the mid to late game is where I think this is going to be useful. But you have to be kind of winning on the board state to be able to make that swing. You're not going to, otherwise you're not pushing the challenges through, I guess. So, but with the big dragons, we know how they do in challenges. I mean, Viserion seems impossible to defend any challenge where he attacks. So yeah, they should be able to do that. And the one that stands, the Rhaegar, as you just mentioned, that's actually, I didn't think of that either. But yeah, when someone does that against me, I won't even be mad. I will just, I guess, be impressed.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a subtle thing about this as well that it is a scheme card, so it is rangeable. Um, Winning the intrigue and then having this interrupt to claim show up. Um, that is something we didn't know, and honestly, I'm happy with that. If someone wants to make a ranged dragon deck, I think you go right ahead and let's see it be successful. I'm happy with that.
Yes, and the war as well. So with Trident, Trident has a different timing. You can trigger it after claim is applied, but if this is revealed before, you can use it and then immediately trade it if somehow that works out for you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Although I don't know, Trident with the dragons maybe could be a thing. Who knows?
Oh, with the two cost army now.
Yeah. Okay, and I guess let's do the Night's Watch then next, which
Yeah,
just leaves the neutrals, so that works out perfectly. So we
perfect.
have one of the simpler cards in this pack, Garrett. Uh, so basically, needs the faction card on some plots, omens. So the omens that are played the most to Harris and Morgulis, obviously, and also there's a few more cards that have the omen trait. First Snow has it, I think, in Palace of Sorrows, and Bloody Flux, I think, a few rare ones as well. But basically, what this does most immediately is if it's played against Outwit, it will need the faction card because that plot requires the faction card in the plot phase already to be able to cancel plots. Otherwise, it will just be kind of like an old Bilbao ability whenever someone plays Morgulis or Duharis most of the time, and
Yeah,
that's okay. I don't know. You can't really plan for this guy to save your game or to mess someone else's game, but I think he's so easy to include just because the Bicons at this cost slot are not a thing for Night's Watch. Usually you get the predictable builders with power, stewards with intrigue, and rangers with military, and anything that has two icons without an obvious downside. It's just easy to include. Maybe not three copies since he is unique and dies easily, but uh, difficult to justify not including at least one copy unless you go really, really all in one of the other two traits, I guess. So I think this guy should see a lot of play.
yeah. And as a side note as well, we thought it was very fitting to have one of the first characters introduced in the books be in the first pack of this historically based cycle. So we're surprised that Garrett hasn't been made a character yet thus far. But yeah, no, as you just said, it's basically just about a well-statted card, a well-statted character with a an interrupt that may or may not do something. Um, you're unlikely to have seven omens in your deck, so um, it's it's unlikely that you're building a deck around him, but he's a very easy one in any Night's Watch deck. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, we've seen some plays, for instance, when the opponent reveals Morgulis and then I guess in Reigns they can try to flip into a plot with claim and stuff like that. So this will not work
Yeah.
if Garrett is just randomly in play at that time. So uh, let's just have a quick look if I forgot any other omens that are likely to be played. Ghosts of Harrenhal, sure, can happen. Yeah, but not much else really. Some I've never seen played in my life. The White Shadows, for instance. Mm, yeah, but probably let's say you're not going to play this guy offensively. You're not going to put omens in your deck just so you can trigger him because
Yeah.
kneeling the faction card of an opponent may be virtually useless depending on the specific deck, or it may be extremely strong. It's not under your control, and cards that are not under your control usually are those that end up not really being played. So, but this guy, yeah, will be played for other things, as we said.
Yeah.
Okay, and that leaves us with Sentinel Stand, which actually is quite an interesting one. For me, someone who does not really play the game, doesn't play the decks that care about challenges and strength in challenges that much, is it looks super bland. But actually, I think some players have found it really interesting. If you go with
Mm.
monocon deck, so not doesn't mean all builders. It means just characters with all kinds of icons, but all monocons. So your whatever, a few builders and an old forest hunter and stuff like that. Uh, Basically, all of them will have plus to strength permanently while this is standing, and it is standing. There's no inbuilt way for it to kneel, so it will be standing unless the opponent deals with it. And yeah,
Yeah.
plus 2 for everyone. I mean, that has to make a difference, right, in over the course of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. This is similar to Red Apple Knight. This is definitely a card that we noticed is asking for a different style of Night's Watch deck. That one or fewer challenge icons theme, it's sort of been there, and FFG sort of, it seems like they made a small effort to support it, both with abilities that interact with those sorts of cards and with characters that naturally have one icon. But then it didn't really go very far. So we're hoping to push that a little bit. There's another card within Mists of Memory. I think it's Highborn Recruit that is also doing the same sort of thing. Um, I play tested this one quite a bit in a very interesting deck that utilized uh, core Jon Snow, which I've rarely seen played in today's meta. But you're right. If you build your deck right, it's pretty much just an extra 2 strength to absolutely everyone that you put into play, and it's sort of a way to help justify having such few icons, where the icons that you do have on the board are really strong, or more specifically, the characters with low icons are really strong. Um, I think that's a way that can make the theme a bit more competitive, because right now there's just no real there's no great benefit that you get by having a character with low icons on the board compared to having someone that has 2 or 3 icons who can defend or attack in relevant challenges. So this is one attempt and one way for us to boost that theme without making it too obnoxious.
Yeah, I think in Night's Watch actually, when you play when you go all in on one of the traits, you tend to look for ways actually for those characters to then gain additional icons like Practice Blade and playing off to Galtown and Sir Jeremy Riker and Hotel something, I think does something similar. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, this actually would ruin kind of the strength boost from Sentinel Stand, so doesn't encourage you to do that. But yeah, if you can imagine how much the board state changes just if Winterfell comes in, that gives +1 to all of the board in Stark deck usually. This is like having 2 Winterfells, and yeah, it's just going to be huge. And I guess the winning by 5 and stuff like that also can be made easier. We know the Trident is getting more support, so those forks that are coming all care about winning by 5, right? On the
Yes.
separate challenges, so we could try that. I don't know, but then what does the deck do? How does it win? Is it a wall defense? Is it aggressive? I don't know, but I think certainly this gives you options. At least you can try it. I know Templar has been playing this as a house with a red door location, and everyone that's played against him, I've heard people say, that was such a struggle playing against that. It was so difficult to get anything past that. Looks promising.
The deck that I found success in, as I said, it used Core Jon Snow, and it surprisingly was not about defending at all. And I think realistically, you can't really expect to defend against when you have a monocon deck. And I think that's sort of the point. Like, if you want to defend, play builders, play something that is meant to be for defending. Monocons aren't really going to do that easily. And if they do that, then there's probably a problem with the design of that theme. So with Core Jon, if you just focus on something aggressive with him, you've got Gren and Pip to also boost things. You can put together a roster of monocons that can actually be quite deadly on attack. That could also be something that gets more support down the line. Regardless, though, in that style of deck, Sentinel Stand is always going to be a staple from this point on.
Alright, and that leaves us with the neutrals. So we have 4 cards coming here. And the first one actually is a champ card by Alex. So this is from winning the Online Worlds 2 years ago with a Greyjoy deck on that occasion. And he has designed an Old Gods card that lets you have a look at an opponent's plot before you have to make your choice. Obviously not every round, because you need to sacrifice it, so you need to make a decision which round you want to check. And so it happens at the beginning of the plot phase, so this is important, and the opponent will know that you are triggering this, so they can then I can imagine, I guess, a mini game in my head where there is a reset that's still in the deck available, and you don't know, is it coming this round, is it coming the next round. So the opponent knows you've triggered this, they have to make their choice. Am I playing my reset, am I playing something else? And then you choose after, and of course you choose the counter potentially. So some people have played it. I've heard that it's good. It's got some results. So I've not tried it myself, but it's definitely an interesting mechanic.
Yeah, I know. Me and you especially, we ran into a lot of mechanical questions about this card and how exactly it would work. Because when Alex had come to us with the design, immediately we were like, "This seems complicated, but we love it." Mm-hmm. it's very blood raveny, and in fact, one of the main reasons why we started off with this card in the first pack, and actually have a lot of desire to go with this pack, was the fact that we knew a Blood Raven was coming, which fits the whole mandate, the whole theme of Mists of Memory, of looking into the past and seeing what has happened, and in Blood Raven's case, looking a little bit into the future. In this scenario, I think like it's a 3-cost 2-strength monocon. More importantly, it's a neutral character with insight. I think that on its own is always great to use as a base case value, with the reaction, as you just said, in some cases being more of a deterrent to use a reset. So if someone triggers this on you and you want to reset, what's the point if they can see what you're doing? So it's sort of forcing your opponent to play something more modest if they have that available, rather than going with the most damaging plot. Glad to see it's getting play. I sort of expected it to, and I'm glad that we figured out most of the mechanical issues with it. Most.
Yeah, the question what happens if 2 players have it. Yeah, it's basically comes down to who is first player, because you can't. Sometimes there is a situation where 2 the two of them cannot resolve at the same time. So it's
Yeah.
the first player gets to choose. Yeah. So earlier I was talking to Peter, who played in that online event last weekend, and he was playing this in a Tyrell white book deck, and he was saying that it won him 2 games in Swiss of the four rounds, simply by so he was playing tourney as the closer, and he wanted to know, is the reset coming this round or not, and he would delay the tourney if it was so. And if not, then he would just play tourney and win, and that's it's an interesting interaction for sure.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to say about Bloodraven. What was it?
I mean, the fact that this is all coming from a neutral character as well is super key. So he can just slot into any deck as
Yes,
an emergency, just like I said with Peter there. Um, an emergency, can I play this finisher now or not?
yeah. Night's Watch has had the Trixie Bird for a while. That's what I wanted to say. So one thing is, of course, knowing what the plot is going to be, and the other thing is being able to do anything about it. So I guess if you're playing this, maybe it affects your own plot deck. The cards like Forgotten Plans could gain in value, or Varys' Riddle, or something like that, or even Return to the Fields. I mean, you can trigger this and see it's Morghulis, but then if your remaining plots are not counters to Morghulis, then maybe it's a bit of a waste. But yeah, I guess you would have some support for him as well, so that you can use his ability. You can use the knowledge to make choices of your own that benefit you. Then we have Calm as Still Water. So this is a save event, an interesting save mechanic, because it's not only a save, it returns the character to hand, which again is one of those two-edged abilities where on the one hand of course the character is removed, so any kind of power it had or anything like that falls off, and you need to replay it. You need to take a bit of a tempo hit, pay the cost again. But on the other hand, anything with the enters play ability that you want to retrigger will benefit from escaping the board and being replayed. And also it's a rare save that works against burn, because since it leaves play like Hagen's Daughter, it's automatically also remedies the ongoing terminal condition, as the rules describe it. So it will always work as a save. So I'm not sure. I've seen it. I've used it as well. I've used it on a bagging rather when I've spent it to rebestow it. So I can't say it's useless, but I don't know. I haven't had it against me yet. So I guess this is one that I don't know. Have you seen it played?
No, I haven't seen it played at all. It's a sort of card where I feel like it's going to fit in some very specific decks and nowhere else. So, as you mentioned, in scenarios where you want to rebestow someone, that's a very niche scenario, but it still works. I see it being used in scenarios like ambush decks. Um, for example, if I'm playing a Martell Icon control deck and I put down a Dornish Spy, and then I use that to return it to hand and then reuse it. It acts as both a save and me returning back to hand. But with that, you're using up a card slot to repeat some cards in a bit of a niche way. Um, yeah, I don't think this card is super strong, but it definitely has its uses in very specific decks. And I don't think there was much more we could really do to add to this without making it really bloated and really complicated. I like the simplicity of it, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, some cards, maybe Boros, for instance, would when he comes into play, it's crazy value, right? So you would
Yeah,
want potentially. First of all, you don't want him killed, so don't want him in the death pile. You want him. So if it happens naturally that he is killed, you want this save for him. But also, if he's in play and military is initiated against you, you can just choose him for claim if you're not afraid of a cancel, for instance, and that basically works as a kind of like Iron Bank will have its due, or a clever feint on him allows you to replay him naturally. So
Yeah.
that's one option. Or in Sand Snakes, Dorea has an incredible ability if you can bounce her in and out, but also there you have options of your own, I guess, for doing that.
Yeah,
So.
like Brimstone, yeah. Or you would have the Iron Bank as its due, like as an option. Keeping in mind that also that then can't put the person back into play, but and it doesn't save them obviously. But if your intention is to return to hand, there are other cards that can also provide you that value. This obviously has the benefit of saving as well, which is a small addition to what you want to do.
Okay, and then we also have two plots in this spec. So the first one
Yes.
is the one many people have been looking forward to. At the Tower of Joy is an incredible protection plot. So when it's revealed, you can choose a character, and that character cannot be killed that round, or basically until you reveal a new plot. And that can work in the plot phase. It has an initiative of 3, so it should, for instance, beat Morghulis unless there's a lot of modifiers somehow. Doesn't beat some other decks, for instance. It will not beat plots. I mean, it will not beat Wildfire. But I don't know. So in testing, the cost has the gold value. I mean, has changed a little bit. So it used to be 4, and I thought it provided some incredible value. So one of the playtesting events that we had was won by a Fat Cat deck, Stark deck, that had her gain some quick power as she usually does. There was some of the new cards, the other new cards also, like Karstark Lancer, used in that. And then when you try to remove her, of course, Tower of Joy, nothing happens to her that round, and then she gets some more power, and next round either you just win or you go into some kind of return to the fields and she wins passively. So that was one idea, but just forgetting about a Voltron like that, just playing this into Morghulis, right, and picking basically the biggest character you have that's not protected. It's 3 gold, but if you're saving, let's say, a Robert Baratheon, may as well be 10, right? So there is value, but you need to win the minigame as well, right? Like you do with some other plots.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I found a lot of value in this in playtesting as well, where you just need to keep your Voltron alive, really. It does have that counter to Valmangulas, but similar to something like Bloodraven, that's a very specific scenario. Outside of that, yeah, it was a sort of card where the ability was straightforward in playtesting, and it was just fine tuning the cost, initiative, and reserve. And I think we got to a very good point. It does have the war trait, but I don't think that actually really provides you much in Battle of the Trident. I mean, it can give you something, of course, but if you're naturally flipping it, I guess that's fine. If you're not flipping it naturally through Battle of the Trident, that's also fine. It's not doing anything crazy for you in that deck. But yeah, I like how it turned out, and I love the art as well.
Yeah,
More accurate art always makes me happy.
I think also in the wars to come, of course, with the war trait beneficial there, and some of the Voltron decks potentially can use that agenda, either with Fat Cat or with Drowned God, where also you would need the character that is your guy that collects all the power. You would need to have it especially protected. So that's
Yeah.
one benefit potentially. Now the other thing, so we had the Eerie, the 4-cost Eerie that has this same ability, basically word for word almost. Uh, that's that can be used every round. If you just pay the initial tempo hit, you pay the 4 gold, and you have this protection every round for your characters. Never has seen any play throughout the game's history, basically. So I don't know. And here you have a single plot, takes your plot
But
slot, not great gold, but somehow I have the feeling that this will be played.
The key difference with the Eerie, though, remember, is that stops it for a phase, and you have to do it after the phase begins. So in a scenario with Valar you sort of have to use the Eerie before any plots are revealed, and so your opponent knows that that character's not going to die. And again, it's only lasting for the phase. I think the difference with the Eerie lasting for a phase and triggering it when a phase begins is less valuable than a low stat plot that simply applies pretty much the entire round.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to potentially someone using this offensively at some point. Choose an opponent's character, and that character
Yeah,
basically choose a claim soak, right? A reducer or something, and then
yeah,
suddenly
that's
big
possible.
gets claimed. Yeah, we've seen that happen.
Yeah,
We've seen it with the
very
crown
useful.
basically. So when the reducers can't leave play, and then
Yeah,
especially decks that plan for the crown play it themselves, and all of their characters basically are cost X or cost one, and the one that's not like a Wyman Manderley or something is there with all the Baron scouts, and suddenly you lose military, and he's the only eligible character. That can
yeah,
happen. So.
yeah,
Mm. Okay, and finally we have Open Revolt. This is yes, so this gains you power like a Winter Festival, but not quite like it. Has 4 gold, and you need to not lose an Intrigue challenge to get 2 power. But there is, of course, the added bonus that if you play this in Reigns and you have used a few plots, to be fair, 3 or more is a big number for Reigns to get through. Usually you would not get through the entire scheme deck in there, but if you do a little bit, 4 power is quite a lot and can be used as a closer potentially as well.
yeah,
I have played against it, and I could see it in play right there, and nothing I could do to stop it. It was just there like a Winter
yeah.
Festival. But other times, I guess it stays either unplayed, or if you're playing it normally outside of a range deck, pretty sad round, I guess. No power gain, no ability, and not great stats.
Yeah, this we came into this initially with the Mr. Mary card slot. We said that we wanted to have a plot that is very specifically and very clearly there to boost Reigns of Castamere. And this is what came out with the theme obviously being, as you can see with the artwork, being based around the Reigns and their open revolt. There was a quote that we had, but we had to cut it just because there wasn't really much room for it on the card in the end. But um, this is very clearly working really well with Reigns of Castamere. Technically, you can use it on its own, and I think that's something that is important to have on any card. If one card only works with the one other card, then it's, in my mind, it's not really a good design. Um, but this has, even gaining 2 power for your faction as a base case for not for meeting the condition of this plot, still decent. That's a Winter Festival in its own. Um, but if you're able to, the brackets is obviously very clearly for Reigns of Castamere. Um, if you're able to meet that relatively difficult condition, and that proved that way in playtesting, you deserve that 4 power. We did experiment with this also working for Battle of the Trident, where it was 3 or more scheme or war plot cards matching the traits of Open Revolt. Uh, I know I tested that in Battle of the Trident. It became a bit too easy in Trident compared to Reigns of Castamere, which sort of ruined the intent of the card. So I'm glad that we ended up keeping it to just fit Reigns of Castamere, even though it can technically still work in Battle of the Trident, although there's not really that many schemes that you can work with in that deck. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it seems like people are playing it, which is great to see.
Yeah, just checking now how many schemes have the other traits as well. Yeah, difficult. There's a few wars, yeah, but no siege, and scheme and edict is not a combination either. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, you have a theoretical chance at least in actually Wildfire Assault, Pointy End, and this, for instance, and you need one more, right? Oof. Okay, Targaryen
yeah,
can have Dance of the Dragons. I don't know. Maybe I bet someone at some point will be able to make it work.
Yeah, in the future, if there's ever a scheme with War, Edict, or Siege, uh, those traits combined, um, this could obviously work. But it's a very narrow scenario, so we're okay with that.
Right, and this was the last one. So we are under 2 hours. I'm not sure if we'll make it in the end, but we have, we still have this part that we usually do. We have to pick our favorites for this one. So let's take a moment. I have not picked mine, but I'll have a look. And do you have a clear one?
Um, I think I do. I think I, I want to pick two, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say Scheming Snake is probably my favorite, and that's
Mm.
just because, as I mentioned, it's applicable in so many decks that I love to play. Um, Even though it's not breaking those decks, it's a really nice addition to those decks. So that's probably my favorite. Um,
Yeah, um, I don't know. Don't want to be boring and always pick a Baratheon card, but okay,
you're welcome
so
to.
I know that Barrick is going to be a good one for Baratheon. Uh, mm, I'm actually not that excited for the rest of the Baratheon cards in this cycle, so I think two of my favorites are in this first chapter pack, and
Yeah,
Barrick is maybe the strongest, but it's just something in me that likes Lady Maria more for some reason. I've played
yeah,
it in playtesting and had fun with it, and even though I had a disastrous weekend with my smuggler attempt the other time, still the card is fun, so tempted to go Lady Maria here and see what happens.
yeah,
Mm, yeah, so we'll be doing this a lot now with packs being released quicker, so I guess by the time we get to the next one, we won't really have an answer whether our favorite picks were impactful or not. It will be more of a long-term project to follow our choices here. Uh,
yeah.
so, does anything worry you if you had to now tell me which card you potentially see as problematic? Is there anything?
Well, this isn't entirely based on the current what we've currently been seeing, but Marcella is the efficiency of Marcella did worry me a little bit in playtesting, but similar to my argument of key characters being a bit, useful, being a bit good rather than just fodder, binder fodder. Sorry,
Mhm.
um, Marcella, providing that value at a two-cost card, at a two-cost level, seems appropriate to me. But I guess if there was anything that I was to be worried about, it would maybe be her. Um, and possibly Open Revolt for just being too. Once someone finds a Reigns deck that really works, that plot's just providing an immense amount of value. But I mean, it's luckily it's kept in check by the fact that you have to reveal those scheme plots. So that's less likely to be consistent in a single deck.
Yeah, interesting. I would not have said open revolt myself, but yeah, could happen. I think the Lannister cards I agree here. So Myrcella and Castamere. Uh, I don't know. I remember the all the complaints about Free Folk. Now Free Folk wasn't the original one before the redesigns. Wasn't winning an amazing number of games. That didn't have such a high win rate, and certainly never did win a major tournament. But I remember how much people hated it, and this is just has that same vibe, I guess. So I think Castamere will not be popular by Lannister opponents.
Yeah,
So that's one, and I'm just skimming through that. Carstar Glancer I've complained about, but realistically, okay, it's going to annoy me by passively beating me when I will feel like I didn't really deserve to lose, but generally problematic, probably not, I guess so. I don't know, Tower of Joy might also ruin some plans, but I think the stats, I suspect we got them right with the 3 gold, that it's not
yeah,
just going to be everywhere, and there is going to be some tempo of hit unless you're playing Tyrell and have the Arbor out or something, and you can afford it. I think it's going to be
It's on
balanced.
par with something like Outwit, with that also being 3 gold.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's strong when you win the mini game and out with something. It's really good, but if you don't, it sucks for you. And you either way, you take some hit from the stats.
yeah.
Okay, so any final thoughts on the pack, Steven? Generally, do you think it's? Are you happy basically where it's ended up?
Definitely. And I think more importantly, I'm happy with how we've done with with testing, developing, testing, and tweaking 120 cards at once. Uh, I've definitely noticed that this has helped with creating artwork and wording refinements and everything 20 cards at a time rather than an entire large batch of cards. And so I'm really happy with how this pack and I guess the rest of the cycle will turn out, just because it's less stress on a lot of key members in those teams um, than before. And on top of that as well, we've got 120 new cards coming out, which is great to see.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this one will probably be a success. I'm just looking at it. I'm not seeing a lot of waste really. I'm not seeing uh, a number of cards that cannot be played or will not realistically see in competitive decks. Maybe a few here and there, and a few that are before its time, I guess. Lonely Hills that are destined to be better in the future, I guess, at some point. But I think this one looks good to me,
Yeah,
and also I would agree. So the 7 month or 8 month waits between packs that we've had in the past, there is some stagnation that happens there, and now yeah, it will just be every couple of months we'll get something new to play with, some new toys, and looking forward to that. Even and it's easier to take. Like you know that I dislike some Baratheon cards, for instance, pretty heavily, and it's easier to take if they're just coming. Okay, this nothing for me here. Not that long a wait, I guess, for the next ones. So uh,
yeah,
and also with this cycle format, basically there's a little bit for everything. That's the main thing that I like. So every team for
yeah,
every faction. Okay, not literally everything, but for every kind of deck that the faction has, for every style, for every team, there will be something across the whole cycle with everyone getting what is it, 12 cards. So yeah, and chance to introduce new teams as well. And we've had in the previous years when we wanted to introduce something new. Of course, okay, you print a card and then next pack comes in 8 months and has another card for that team, and it's just so slow to build it. But here, if you need to push something, you have stuff to work with. You have space with
yeah.
among those 12 cards, so it will be easier to develop teams as well in the future, I think.
Definitely. And one extra thing that I like about us doing 120 at once, and more specifically 12 cards per faction, is it allows us to slip in some, again, I've mentioned it a few times here, boring but like necessary cards. Like High Garden Treasury on its own. If you had that card released and then waited 8 months, it's a bit not not very fun. But this way, we can still have some of those cards in there that are pretty necessary for release, but aren't going to be like a big wow, amazing card. Um, and people don't have to wait too long for the next batch of cards to come out. And eventually, you can see what's coming, you just don't know when. There are some wow cards in each faction. We hope, like there's Roose Bolton and Old Hawk or Tywin Lannister. Like there's some really interesting cards coming out, and this gives us the flexibility to have both those and the necessary ones.
Okay, so I guess that's it for True Telling. Once
Yeah,
again, for the third time, I will let you know that this is where you can find the files to have them printed. Either you can print them at home if you want cards that are legal for tournament play. You can have them professionally printed as well. Uh, and we can, I guess, have a look at what comes next. So we have on ThronesDB, this listed as a whole cycle. If you click on Mists of Memory, you get all the cards. So those in red are unreleased. Those in blue are the ones that have been released so far, which is just one chapter pack. This one, and then this is all the unreleased ones so far listed here, and they will be split into a further 5 packs of 20 cards. So do we know, Steven, what comes next and what the approximate timeline is for that?
Approximate timeline, as I mentioned before, it should be roughly expect something every 2 months, give or take, a week or so. It is obviously based on, if we can get artwork sorted out and wording figured out, but it is coming up to the 2 month mark soon. So I guess expect something sort of soon. I don't want to give anything away. In regards to what's in the pack, no. It'll be found out when it's revealed. We shouldn't be able to really show things beforehand, so everyone gets a fair competitive chance to play things when they come out and know what's available, especially for tournaments. So, yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of tournaments, the next one, the big one that I usually end with an invitation, and this one it's the World Cup coming up. So it's a team event again with countries competing, and we already have a decent number of entries. So the deadline still not reached, so you can register. It's just been actually pushed back 2 weeks, precisely because of expecting another chapter pack to be released first, and since it's an event that takes quite a few weeks, the organizers didn't really want the new pack to come out just after the tournament has started, and then you would miss out on the cards again, like we did with Battle for the Seven Kingdoms. So hopefully the timing works out for that, and there is still time for everyone to register. Hopefully you have, or your country has. If it has not, and you would still like to play, maybe you are the person who can make that happen, or if not, join the World Cup Discord anyway and ask what the chances are to be able to put a team together. I'm sure people will help you, and if anyone else is looking for players, you might be able to make that happen. And yes, so hopefully the new pack is known before the deadline for submitting decks is, of course, because you have to give people some chance to see what the cards are if they are going to use them, and if not, well, of course, nothing to be done. And so one last thing that I wanted to mention here, Steven. So there is the design team always is short-handed in some areas, so I will give you this chance maybe to talk about that a little bit, and how people can possibly contribute if anyone is available here that is listening or watching this video.
Playtesting is always available to everyone. So if you need relevant links for that, we can add it in the description, or there's usually a lot of people in the Global Liberation Team Discord that can help with that. But playtesting is open to everyone. We love the more playtesting, the less chance that we're going to have broken or useless cards. In regards to specific things, anyone who's happy to help us find artworks and more specifically get permission for artworks is always welcome. And anyone who's able to help with programming for the Iron Throne website is also welcome. We're a bit short-staffed on that, but they require some prior skills. But happy to help anyone out who's willing to help with that. We've got quite a few experienced people who are able to help, but we're just a bit short-staffed with that.
Yeah, I've seen in recent times how much work you actually are involved in at the moment. So it all basically stages of development, from getting all the cards on the playtesting server to work, and of course being transferred to the main Iron Throne website as well in the end, and having to deal with all of the art. Yeah, it must take some time. So I bet you're pretty drained at the moment. So yeah, please, people, if anyone is capable of helping with those specific areas, yeah, do let us know, and it will be appreciated as always.
Yeah, free time is a rarity in my life right now. So yeah, any help's appreciated, but yeah, I'm always happy to chat with any way that you're willing to help. Those three areas are key, with playtesting probably being the easiest one to handle.
Okay, and yes, so that's the review. Just over 2 hours, but we did talk about the cycle in general a little bit. So expect the next ones to be just under, if you can make it. But yeah,
Yeah,
so thank you, Steven, for doing this with me again. I like that it's now become kind of a tradition, and we can yeah, revisit the old ones we did and see
yeah,
if our predictions turn out to be correct.
yeah. Let's see how right or wrong we are. I think I've got a track record of like 1 out of 20 for for my predictions on what's going to be strong and what's going to be weak.
Yeah, mostly we miss,
It's
but
funny.
then the community as a whole misses as well. So we're not just particularly bad. It's just difficult. Yeah, it's difficult to
Yeah,
know.
it's hard to judge the matter. Yeah.
If it was easy to predict, then all cards would always come out balanced. But yeah, we know it's not that way.
Yep.
Okay, and yeah, thank you everyone for joining us again, and join us for the World Cup as well, and hopefully in the next review we do as well. And yeah, enjoy the cards if you can.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy.